Get out. You're nothing but a parasite. My mother's words cut through me like ice as I stood in our living room, the same space where I'd spent my entire childhood. I'm Alex, 22 years old, and I just missed my sister Megan's graduation dinner because I was working a double shift at Wilson's Auto Repair. The same job that paid for the electricity, keeping the lights on in this house. The same job that covered the internet bill. My family never thanked me for. Dad sat in his recliner, eyes fixed on the floor, saying nothing. Megan leaned against the doorframe with a smug look I'd grown used to over the years. My younger brother, Ethan, muttered good riddance and kicked at the carpet. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. I'd always been the odd one out. The one who worked late shifts to help with bills, groceries, and the extras they took for granted. Tonight was the last straw, apparently. Mom's face was flushed with anger. You're selfish, Alex. Get out and don't come back. This wasn't just another argument. This was the final. I went in my room and packed a duffel bag with jeans, t-shirts, and my old jacket. My hands trembled, but I kept moving. What was the point of explaining myself? They'd already decided who I was. I stepped outside into the cool night air. The porch light hummed above me, casting shadows on the mailbox we'd painted together when I was 10. I heard the lock click behind me. My beat-up Honda was parked out front, with $250 and half a tank of gas to my name. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling the weight of everything. Mom's anger, Dad's silence, Megan's smirk, Ethan's dismissal. I wasn't just leaving a house, I was losing a family. The road ahead was dark, but I started the engine, promising myself I'd make it through. The first few nights were rough. My coworker Jason let me crash on his couch, which I appreciated, but it wasn't home. His apartment smelled of coffee, and his golden retriever Max snored all night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, replaying my mother's angry face and my father's downcast eyes. Jason didn't press me to talk. He just handed me a soda and said, "You'll figure it out, Alex." But he had his own bills, and I couldn't stay forever. I spent my days looking for my own place. Wilson's Auto paid decent money, but rent in this town wasn't cheap. I checked bulletin boards and scrolled through classifieds. Most places wanted first and last month's rent plus a deposit, impossible with my $250. After a week, I found a listing for a studio on the edge of town. It was in an old brick building with a buzzer that worked half the time. I met the landlord, Mr. Gaines, a man in his 60s with rough hands who looked at my work boots and said, "You seem like you'll pay on time." The apartment wasn't much, a single room with a dripping sink, a humming refrigerator, and a window that wouldn't open. The carpet was stained, and the lights flickered. But standing there with my duffel bag, I felt something like pride or maybe relief. I signed the lease, handed over nearly every dollar I had, and received a key that felt heavy in my palm. That night, I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag. The walls were bare, and the silence was deafening, but it was a start. The next day, I went to a thrift store with my tight budget. I found a mattress, lumpy but clean, for $25 and a lamp with a crooked shade. The cashier, an older woman with silver hair, asked if I was setting up my first place. I nodded without saying much, but her kindness stayed with me. Back at the apartment, I put the mattress by the window and plugged in the lamp. Its soft glow made the room feel less empty. I took a poster from my bag, a mountain scene I'd bought at a yard sale years ago, and taped it above the bed. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That mattered. Lying on the mattress that night, I could hear the neighbor's TV through the wall, a game show with applause that seemed a world away. I remembered the house I'd left, Mom's lasagna in the oven, Dad's sports on the radio, Megan's music playing. I used to fix their leaky faucet and mow the lawn before work. Did they notice I was gone? I pulled the sleeping bag tighter, my chest heavy not with anger but with something softer and sadder. I wasn't sure who I was without them. I'd spent so long trying to keep everything together, paying bills they never thanked me for, working extra shifts so Ethan could get new sneakers. Now it was just me, and I wasn't sure if that was freedom or emptiness. I closed my eyes, listening to the drip from the sink. I told myself I could make this work. I'd get a chair, maybe a rug to make this place feel more real. I had the auto shop tomorrow, the familiar clang of tools, and the guys laughing during lunch. It wasn't family, but it was something to hold on to. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but I had a key, a bed, and a light that I owned. For now, that was enough to keep going day by day. Wilson's Auto became my lifeline, a noisy refuge of clanging tools and motor oil. I was up before dawn, putting on my worn boots, the soles peeling like old memories. My studio was still sparse, just the mattress, lamp, and that mountain poster. But I was out the door quickly, thermos in hand. The shop was a mile away, so I walked to save gas. The morning air was crisp, smelling of dew and pavement. I let the rhythm of my steps drown out the thoughts in my head. I didn't think about Mom's voice or Dad's silence. Not out here. At work, I was in my element. By 8, I was deep in an engine, fixing a misfire while the radio played classic rock. Rick, Miguel, and Big Dave were good company. They teased me about my coffee addiction, but they didn't pry. I liked that. I wasn't ready to talk about being kicked out or how my family treated me like a parasite while I kept their lights on. Instead, I focused on spark plugs, oil changes, and the satisfying click of a wrench. I worked every extra shift I could, staying late to rebuild transmissions or rotate tires. The overtime was a lifesaver. My rent was paid, and I had enough for a folding chair and a microwave. Small victories, but they added up. Lunch breaks became my favorite time. We sat outside on milk crates, eating sandwiches from the deli across the street. Rick always had a story from his trucking days, and Miguel laughed so hard he'd choke on his soda. I joined in, but kept my own stories private. I didn't tell them how Ethan and I used to joke about superhero movies, or how Dad and I would tinker with his old radio in the garage. Those moments seemed like someone else's life now. Still, the guys' conversation filled a void and made me feel like I belonged somewhere, even if just for an hour. One evening, as I was closing up shop, my phone vibrated. It was Ethan, and my stomach twisted. I hadn't heard from him since that night. His message was blunt. "Nice job, Alex. Ditching us and still owing Megan for that phone bill. Low, even for you." I stared at the screen, vision blurring. I had paid that $150 bill last year after Megan promised to pay me back. She never did. And now Ethan had twisted it, making me the deadbeat. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to respond, to tell him I'd covered their internet and groceries for years. But I stopped. What was the point? They had already written their version of me. I shoved the phone in my pocket and walked home, the journey longer than usual. The streetlights flickered, creating shadows on the cracked sidewalk. I felt a burning in my chest, not just anger, but something deeper, like a bruise you don't notice until you press it. I remembered coming home from work to find Mom setting the table, the smell of her lasagna filling the air. I'd fix whatever was broken, a leaking sink, a wobbly shelf, because that's what I did. Had Ethan forgotten that? Had they all? Or did they simply not care? At my apartment, I collapsed onto the mattress, the springs creaking beneath me. The neighbor's TV murmured through the wall, some cooking show with cheerful voices. I took out my phone and reread Ethan's text. Part of me wanted to call him and ask why he was doing this, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Instead, I put the phone face down and stared at the poster, its painted peaks glimmering in the lamplight. I was exhausted, not just from work, but from carrying this weight, this ache I couldn't name. I told myself to keep going. Tomorrow was another day, another shift, another chance to build something new. I closed my eyes, the microwave humming softly, and held on to that thought, small as it was, because it was all I had. Sunday morning found me at my kitchen counter, really just a slab of laminate in my studio, discovering my bank account was bleeding. The shop was closed, and I was sipping instant coffee while going through my statements on my phone. Rent was paid. Groceries were stocked, mostly ramen and canned soup, but the numbers didn't add up. I'd been careful, skipping lunch runs with the guys and buying only necessities. So why was my balance shrinking each month? I scrolled through the statements, my thumb smudging the screen, and found it, a regular payment of $220 a month labeled Auto Loan DL Morris. Dad's truck. My heart skipped and then pounded hard. I'd been paying for his truck since I was 19, when he swore it was just temporary. He never mentioned it again. I never stopped. I set the phone down. My coffee had gone cold. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and a distant car horn outside. I remembered bringing them money from my first paycheck at the shop. Proud to help. Dad had simply said, "Good job, Alex." And that was enough. I didn't question it, just like I didn't question paying for their internet or Ethan's phone plan. It's what you did for family, right? But sitting here now, I see everything clearly. They had leaned on me, and I had let them, invisible as a worn-out tire. I grabbed my jacket and headed to the bank, my feet moving faster than my thoughts. As I canceled the payment, the teller, a woman with a name tag that read, Helen smiled at me kindly. You sure? She asked, her glasses slipping down. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, I'm done. Walking back, the air was heavy with coming rain, but I felt lighter. Like I'd shrugged off a coat I hadn't realized I was wearing. But there was a tug, a nagging doubt. What if Dad couldn't cover it? What if they lost the truck? I pictured him in the driveway polishing that old Ford like it was his pride and joy. Mom brings him iced tea on hot days. I shook it off and kicked a pebble down the sidewalk. They had kicked me out. Called me a parasite. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. Still, the thought stuck like grease under my nails, hard to wash away. Back at the apartment, I cleaned to keep my hands busy, stacking dishes and folding my only decent towel. I looked at the mountain poster. Its peaks were sharp against a fake sunset. I wondered if Dad even realized I had been paying. Did he think it was magic? Do trucks just pay for themselves? I snorted, but it wasn't funny. I'd spent years supporting them, my paychecks disappearing into their lives while they looked right through me. Canceling that payment was about more than money. It was drawing a line, saying that I mattered too. Later, I went to the corner store for air. The clerk, an older man wearing a baseball cap, chatted about the weather while ringing up my bread and milk. Storm's coming, he added, nodding at the gray sky. I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying Helen's question, the weight of the canceled payment. Back home, I made a sandwich with slightly stale bread and ate standing up, looking out the stuck window. The first raindrops hit and streaked the glass. I felt that ache in my chest again. Not anger, but something gentler. Raw. I was free of their burden, but it wasn't triumph. It was like finishing a book you'll never read again, knowing the ending wasn't what you expected. I sat on the mattress as the lamp cast shadows and let the rain's rhythm fill the silence. I didn't know what came next. Work tomorrow. Maybe a new chair if I saved enough. But I knew one thing. I was done carrying what wasn't mine. It was a small step, but it was forward. And that was enough for now. I was sweeping the shop floor, the broom's bristles scraping on concrete, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a slow afternoon, the kind where you could hear the hum of the neon sign out front. I'd kept my head down since stopping Dad's truck payment, focusing on my work and the small life I was building. My apartment now had a second-hand table, a wobbly thing I got for $15, and I'd been sleeping better. The sink strip was almost comforting now. But when I looked at my phone, my stomach dropped. It was a screenshot from Miguel, one of the guys at the shop. Megan had posted on social media a photo of Mom, red-eyed, sitting at the kitchen table where I used to eat. The caption read, "Alex abandoned us. Left Mom like this. Some family, huh?" There was a flood of comments. Strangers calling me a deadbeat, a selfish jerk. Worse. My palms felt clammy as I leaned the broom against the wall. The shop was empty except for me and the faint smell of oil and rubber. I scrolled through the post, each word like a punch. Megan had created a story where I was the villain, abandoning them without explanation. No mention of how I'd paid their bills, fixed their leaks, kept them afloat. No mention of Mom screaming me out the door. The comments stung. People I'd never met were judging me. Their words were sharp and thoughtless. "What a loser," someone said. "His poor mom," with a crying emoji. I wanted to type back and tell them the truth, but my fingers froze. What could I say without sounding desperate, like I was begging to be believed? I shoved the phone away and went outside. The air was warm and heavy. The parking lot was quiet except for a stray cat darting past the dumpster. I sat on the curb, elbows on my knees, trying to breathe. It wasn't just the post. It was the weight of being erased, made into someone I wasn't. I thought of Mom's table, the one I'd sanded down when I was 16. How we'd laugh at her lumpy mashed potatoes. Was she really crying? Or was it staged for Megan's camera? The thought twisted something inside me, not quite anger, more like a hollow ache. Back inside, I had trouble focusing. Rick noticed and asked if I was okay, but I just shrugged and said, "Rough day." He nodded and didn't push, which I appreciated. Later, I clocked out and went to the back lot of the shop. I'd been tinkering with an old motorcycle, a beat-up Kawasaki I'd found cheap. It was a mess, frame rusted, engine sputtering, but I was fixing it. I grabbed a wrench and started working on the carburetor. The metal felt cool under my fingers. Each adjustment, each fix felt like something I could control. The shop's radio played softly, an old country song about losing and moving on. I let it wash over me. This bike wasn't perfect, but it was honest. There were no lies to untangle. I worked until sunset, the sky turning purple. My hands were smeared with grease. The engine sputter was a small victory. It was getting closer to running. I wiped my brow, thinking about Megan's post. Mom's face. Those comments. Yes, they hurt. But they weren't the whole story. I pictured my apartment, the table, and the lamp's glow. It wasn't much, but it was real. Built with my own sweat. I didn't need their version of me. On my way home, I passed the corner store, its lights buzzing. The cashier, the man with the baseball cap, waved as I grabbed a soda. "You look like you're carrying the world," he said, half smiling. I managed to chuckle. "Just a piece of it," I said. Back in my room, I sat on the mattress while the neighbor's TV played game show Cheers. I didn't check my phone again. Megan's post could stay there unanswered. I was tired, not of work, but of their weight and lies. But as I lay back, the bike's purr stayed in my thoughts. I felt a spark of something. Hope, maybe, or just stubbornness. I would keep going, one bolt at a time. My phone rang as I was wiping oil off my hands at the shop sink. The sound cut through the afternoon hum. It was Dad. I hadn't seen his name on my screen since I walked out months ago. My pulse quickened, but I dried my hands on a rag and answered, stepping into the break room for quiet. His voice was rough, like he'd been chewing gravel. "Alex, why was my truck repossessed?" "No hello." "No, how are you?" Just one question, heavy as a dropped wrench. I leaned against the vending machine, its quiet buzz steadying me, and took a deep breath. I stopped paying for it. I answered calmly despite the knots in my stomach. "Dad, you kicked me out. I don't owe you that anymore." There was a pause, long enough that I heard a dog barking somewhere on his end, maybe a neighbor's pet. I pictured him in the kitchen, standing by the fridge with the chipped handle I'd fixed last year. "You can't just do that," he continued, his voice rising. "That's my truck, Alex." I closed my eyes, the break room smelling of burnt coffee and motor oil. I could have yelled, told him I'd paid for years while he said nothing, but I didn't. Instead, I kept my tone even. "I've covered it since I was 19. You never asked how. Never thanked me. I'm done carrying that." He sputtered, his words tumbling over each other. "That's not how family works," he said, like I'd broken some rule. I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat, sharp and bitter. Family. I thought about Megan's post, Ethan's text, and Mom's scream. I thought about my studio, the rickety table, the motorcycle I was bringing back to life. That's what I was building now, not their idea of family. "Maybe not," I said, "but I'm doing what I need to." My hands were steady now, holding the phone, and I felt a shift, like a bolt clicking into place. Dad tried again, his voice lower, almost confused. "You're making this hard, son." Son. The word hurt. Not because I wanted it, but because it felt hollow, like an old tire with no tread left. I glanced at the break room clock, ticking past 6. I had dishes to wash at home and a carburetor to adjust tomorrow. "I've got to go," I said. Not harsh. Just done. He started to speak, but I hung up. The silence was louder than his words. I walked outside, the shop's lot bathed in dusk's gray light. A breeze carried the scent of cut grass from somewhere. And I stood there, phone in my pocket, feeling raw but solid. Dad's call had shaken me, yes, but it hadn't broken me. I wasn't that kid anymore, the one who paid to be needed. I walked home, the sidewalk familiar under my feet, and knew I'd meant everything I said. I was still catching my breath after Dad's call when my phone buzzed again as the shop lot faded into twilight. Mom's name flashed like a warning light. I waited, thumb hovering before answering, steeling myself. Her voice broke through, high and ragged. "Alex, how could you do this to us? That truck was your father's lifeline." I was walking home now, boots scuffing the sidewalk as streetlights flickered on. I didn't interrupt her. Just let her talk. After years of paying their bills, what did I hear? "You're tearing us apart," she said. I could hear Megan in the background, piling on. "Alex, you're so heartless." They always were a team. Ethan was there too, I could tell, but quiet, like he was holding his breath. I passed the corner store with its humming neon sign and leaned against the brick wall, phone pressed to my ear. I could have shouted back, listed every dollar I spent, every late night at the shop, so they could have cable, groceries, and Megan's phone. But I didn't. My voice came out low and steady, like I was talking to a customer. "Mom, I've paid for that truck for years. Internet, bills, all of it. You never said thanks. You called me a parasite and told me to leave. I'm done carrying all of you." There was a beat of silence. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. I heard a chair scrape, maybe Mom sitting down. Megan muttered something I couldn't make out. I pushed off the wall and kept walking, the store's brightness fading behind me. Mom tried again, softer now, almost pleading. "We're family, Alex. You don't just quit. I thought about my studio, the wobbly table. Last week, when I started the motorcycle, it sputtered to life. That was my family now. Building things instead of begging for them. For family to work, people need to see each other, I said, my throat tight but steady. You didn't see me. I was at my building now, the buzzer harsh as I let myself in. I hung up before she could answer, and the click was final, like a door locking. Inside, I collapsed onto the mattress, the lamp making a warm circle on the wall. The neighbor's TV played a rerun, the laughter canned and distant. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from something else, like a weight being lifted. I heard their voices, Mom's desperation, Megan's venom, Ethan's silence. They wanted me to fold, to apologize, but I hadn't. I'd said my piece, plain and simple, and it felt like standing after a long fall. I grabbed a soda from the fridge, the cold can stinging my palm, and sat by the window watching headlights cut through the dark. I wasn't angry, not anymore. It was quieter, sadder, like losing a song you once knew by heart. But I was here, in my own place, and that was something they couldn't take. Tomorrow I'd be back at the shop, wrench in hand, building what was mine. It's been 6 months since I hung up on Mom, and the pain hasn't completely gone away. It's quieter now, like a radio turned down low, humming in the background. My studio is home now, still small, but mine. The wobbly table has a plant on it, a cactus I haven't killed yet. The motorcycle is finished, its chrome gleaming under the shop lights. Riding it down country roads, wind rushing past, feels like flying. I don't hear much from my family. Dad texted once, saying we should talk soon, but I ignored it. Miguel told me Megan was still bitter about her post not ruining me. And Mom tells everyone I went my own way. Ethan's the strange one. Rick spotted him at the deli and said he looked like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. I'm okay with the silence. The shop is my anchor. Rick, Miguel, and Dave aren't just coworkers anymore. They're the guys who show up. On slow days, we grill burgers out back and laugh at Dave's terrible jokes. I have a routine. Work, ride, tinker with a new project. Maybe a coffee table next. My fridge holds more than ramen. I eat steak sometimes when I'm feeling fancy. Last week, I fixed the sink. Stupid little thing, but it felt huge. I'm not rich, but I'm steady. Building a life that fits me, not them. Nights are when I think the most. I sit by the window, lamp on, neighbor's TV playing late-night talk shows. In my head, I picture Mom's kitchen, the sanded table, Dad's radio crackling with baseball. I wonder if they miss me, or if I'm just a story they tell differently now. It hurts, sure, but it's not raw anymore. I have my own stories. How the bike roared to life. Rick was clapping my shoulder when I got a raise. Those matter more. I've learned that family is more than who you're born to. It's about who stays, who sees you. I spent years chasing their approval, thinking my paychecks could buy it. I was wrong. Love isn't a ledger. It's a choice. And they chose not to see me. Being kicked out broke something, but it built something too. I found my worth, not in their words, but in my hands. Fixing engines, growing cacti, riding free. I'm not perfect. Some nights I think about what I could have said differently. But I'm at peace. I live in a place where I'm seen. To anyone out there carrying too much, hear this. You're enough. It's hard to let go. But that's how you find your own path. It's worth every step. I lean back, the cactus catching the light, and smile. I don't need their approval to know I'm all right. I have my key, my bike, my days. That's enough.